background. I've been doing M&A for 18 years. The first 11 were at JP Morgan, where I ran the internet and digital media M&A group for the U.S. And then I came to Code Advisors 7 years ago. Code was started 8 years ago as a bank to help small companies grow. All those banks are gone. There was no small bank to really help people raise money and ultimately do sell-side M&A. Quick commercial on us. We've done 115 or so transactions over the 7 years, about 103 billion of volume. We've sold companies to Google, to Amazon, to Airbnb, to Facebook. We represent companies mainly in the kind of $50 million to $500 million sell-side range. We have done larger. We've done a $4.7 billion deal. We've done a $3 billion deal. But our sweet spot is really 50 to 500. We also raise money, but it's only about 15% of our business. And you'll hear me talk later. You really don't want a bank to raise money for you unless you're raising 50 million or more. The institutions are used to seeing you at that level. But if you're going to raise 5, 10, 15, 20 million from entries and decliner, it's a mistake to show up at the bank. They'll think something's wrong with the company. So you can get behind the scenes advice from banks, and we do that. We can introduce you to people, but you don't want a bank involved in the process. So we're going to talk briefly about the market, just because M&A can't be viewed in a vacuum. M&A is based on CEO confidence. It's based on the other path that you have. If you only have an M&A path, i.e. you can't raise or you can't eventually go public, you don't have that standalone option, the M&A path is not going to work out very well for you because the buyers are sophisticated. Unless you have the power to say no to them because you have other options, you're going to get a bad deal. Up here, this is not to depress anybody, but being a founder is very hard, and most startups fail. The other part of startups is they generally exit through M&A. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's an acqui-hire. Acqui-hires can be good for the teams, not good for investors. And then there's very few that get to this billion-dollar level. There's a lot of talk about unicorns. We'll talk a little bit about those as well during this speech because when you see something that says they're valued at $1 billion, that's not always true. There's a lot of terms that are stuffed in there for people to try to get to $1 billion. So there's very few that kind of reach that level. There's plenty of capital available. And I say this, but when you go out to raise your seed or your Series A, it's very hard. It's still hard to find someone to believe in you. It tends to be that investors want to give money to the same companies. When you have money, they want to give you money. When you're doing well, they want to give you money. When you need money, it's very hard to find them and get to them. But there is plenty of capital coming into the private markets because the public markets aren't returning the same way they used to. It's harder to make money in fixed income and other places. So you're seeing a lot of new entrants into the private market. You're also seeing a lot larger funds be raised. These are just some examples, but in the past, you would see people like Lightspeed doing, $5, $10 million deals. They just raised a $1.8 billion fund. They now have an $800 million growth fund. And so you're seeing people move into that category of looking for larger and larger deals. And the simple math for them, if you think about it, if you turn 10 million 10 times, so you get it 10 times on that 10, you get 20% of that, you get $20 million for the fund or for themselves. So if you take that and you invest $100 million and you turn it one time, you get $100 million, you get 20 for the firm. It's the same economics to them, except they only had to double the value of the company rather than do 10x. So you'll see them do larger and larger funds because the economics are better for them. You have seen over the last 5, 6, 7 years, institutions come into this market, hedge funds come into this market, private equity firms come into this market because this is where the returns are. And so there's a host of people with very large amounts of dollars behind them that have moved into the private market. These are just a list of billion-dollar names. There's a lot of those on there. IPOs. So how the market performs does drive M&A because if CEOs have confidence and investors have confidence that the future is good, they will do more M&A. And you'll see that obviously the market's been on a tear since 2013. And IPO volume was very good last year, and it started out very good this year. M&A. M&A is, again, based on confidence with other markets. We had a really good year in 15, 16, a decent year in 17, and we're off to a pretty good start in 2018. One of the things about M&A that people should understand is it is difficult, and there's a lot of failure in M&A, and that causes CEOs to be cautious about M&A. But there's also a lot of really good case studies where people made big bets. They made them early, and they turned out to be, outstanding bets for them. So YouTube is now valued, if you read research reports, at $160 million. And when they were bought by Google, everybody thought they overpaid, right? Instagram is now valued, hard to read that number, but over $50 billion, right? And what they paid for that, people were pretty surprised. So you can create value through M&A. These are some of the exceptions, but there's also a lot of failure in M&A, which is why it doesn't happen all the time. Talking about the raise. One of the things we see in a raise, and the reason I'm talking about this even in the M&A section, is you need to have that standalone path. And so raising money and being well capitalized when you enter into M&A conversations is almost the number one most important thing. If you're running out of money, these smart acquirers will figure that out and you won't get the right price. You don't have the time to say no. You basically take the deal they want to give you. The key to raising is take the money when it's available. Okay, and a lot of people really focus on valuation, trying to get the right valuation. And the key is having more capital leads to a better exit, right? Even though you take dilution, this says up here 10% of the 500 million is better than 100% of zero. So the outcome is going to be a lot better if you have capital and you have that standalone path. Don't reach for valuation. So you see this all the time where a founder wants to get, let's say, a $500 million valuation. So what he does is the investor comes in and says, I think you're worth $250 million. So they put a bunch of structure in the deal to get that $500 million valuation from marketing terms. What that means is he gets a 1.5 lick preference, he gets participating preferred, things like that, that once you put them in your structure, the next investor wants them, the next investor wants them, and sooner or later you have this liquidation preference standing in front of the common that makes your shares, you and your fellow employees, worth almost nothing. And so do not reach for valuation, get the right valuation. Also, if you raise at 500 and you're really worth 250, the next round needs to be at 750 or $1 billion, and that makes it even harder to get the next round. So take more dilution, be smart about the partners you bring in. You are picking a partner. You're not picking an investor. This person's going to be most likely on your board. There's going to be bad times. Not every startup just goes straight to the moon. So you're going to have a partner that you want to work with. And so it's a much different process than just valuation. Our recommendation is much different than any other bank you'll talk to on how you raise money. You don't go to 25 people. You don't go up and down the street pitching your story to everybody because it's a very small street. Everybody knows everybody, and they will think you're desperate. And they'll be like, well, why did the last 10 guys say no? What you do is you start with 3 to 5. You talk to either your seed investors, bankers you know, friends you know, and you think about who this works with, who should this story resonate with. You pick 3 to 5 of them, and you go pitch the story. If they all say no, there's something wrong with the story. It's not resonating. So then you regroup and you think about going to another 3 to 5 once you've kind of gotten the feedback and figured out what's wrong with the pitch. But you don't go to 20 and then find out that you failed with all 20 and have no one else to go to and you have to adjust your speech. So think about more exclusive. M&A. M&A is very interesting in this time, especially for most of us in this room, and what we deal with, which is, again, below kind of $500 million deals. If you look at the market caps of these companies, it's hard to see on this page, but Apple almost $1 trillion, Amazon at $800 billion. There's very few acquisitions in the 50 to 500 million range that they have to have, right? And you're going to generally the same buyers with almost 80% of M&A. Now, there's more buyers than this. You add Salesforce and others. These are examples of when you go to them, you have very little power with them. The one power you have with them is that you're going to be gone. But if I'm quick dev at Amazon, I probably get 75 inbounds a month that says, please buy me. And they'll pay attention to the 2 or 3 that are on their priority list. But by the way, if your sector or your company's on their priority list, they probably already found you before you called them. So then what they react to is something that's going to be gone. And this is where sometimes bankers can help. if I call Peter Krovic at Amazon and say, this company's going to be gone, they have an offer, you got 3 weeks, if it's anywhere on their list, they'll move. Because the worst thing for a corp dev guy to do is get a call from his boss later that says, why didn't we look at that? They see the announcement in the paper, we never saw that company. So they will react to pressure, but the pressure needs to be real. You need to go to them when you have something in hand. Or you develop a long-term relationship with them and they lean in, which we'll talk about in a second. But remember, no matter how important your startup is, there's almost nothing they have to have. We've talked about this a little bit already. You need a standalone plan. If you don't have a standalone plan, these smart M&A people will figure it out right away, and they will force you into a bad deal. It's not because they're bad people, but they're smart and they realize, hey, why would I pay $200 million when I could pay $50 million? And the standalone path means that you have enough runway to get through a long process, that you could raise again, and that you have other alternatives, other companies that would want to buy you, etc. M&A process. So never ever start a process without somebody that's leaned in. So what you don't do, similar to the raise, is create a list of 20 people and with 3 months of runway and say, let's go call them, let's go give them a book, let's go tell them that they have to bid on this date, then they'll all bid that date, and then we'll take the best bidders from the due diligence, and then we'll bid them against themselves again. Doesn't work. They're way too busy, they're way too powerful. What you do is, a year, 2 years before you want to sell, you start engaging with these companies on a commercial basis. So if you come to Code and say, I just want to flat out just go sell the company, but no one's interested, we won't take that on. What we will tell you is, we will introduce you to the right people on the commercial side. You'll build a relationship over 3, 6, 9, 12 months. So they get to know you, they get to know your capabilities. You're not for sale. You're going down the standalone path because the second you're for sale, they wonder why, if your company's so good, that you want to sell, right? So you're going to spend a lot of time with these buyers, getting to know them, and eventually, if you have a good company, they're going to lean into you. In that 4th commercial meeting with Amazon, they're going to say, we want to buy you. Have you thought about M&A? And your response is going to be, no, we're going down the standalone path, right? And then they're going to say it again, because they're not shy people. If Apple wants to buy you or Google wants to buy you, they're not going to sit there and work with you and not ask if you want to be bought and not come at you. So if they haven't asked, it's generally because they're not ready to buy you yet, or they don't think it's critical yet. So you're going to say no a few times, and then eventually you're going to say, listen, I have outside investors, I have employees to think about. It would be interesting to see what we could do on the Amazon or Apple platform, and then you lean into the conversation. Then what you do is work that one party to the right place. Once you have that party in the right place, either a verbal offer or a term sheet, then if you have a banker, you light up all the other conversations. If you don't have a banker, you light them up yourself. But that's one of the advantages of having a banker, is to go call all the other corporate development guys and say, this thing's going to be gone. And if your banker has credibility with them, they'll lean in if they have any interest. Let's see. Founders. So there's a reason why you guys are great at building companies. And it's because you don't take no for an answer. Anything you want to do, as I think Matt said earlier during the day, you do. If there's a roadblock, you go right through it. Okay? It's the exact opposite in M&A. You cannot call Google and force them to buy you. And the more times you call them and the more pressure you put on them to buy you, the further they're going to run away. Okay, so it's the exact opposite of everything you guys do on a day-to-day basis. You're great because you do all that, and generally you're not great at M&A because you think it's the same way to do M&A. They have to come to you. They have to think they're chasing you. And it's a nuanced conversation because they need to understand how good you are, but you can't be too available to them, and you can't try to force M&A on them. Okay, understanding the acquirer. There's 3 different reasons why people do deals. One is they're looking to grow, and generally as a startup you're growing and you're growing into an area where they may not be yet. 2 is defensive. Somebody else is going to buy you. They need to protect their turf. and 3 is talent. I would say out here in the Valley, probably 90% of the deals are talent acquisitions, which sometimes can be good for founders and employees, generally aren't good for investors. In that third category, you will even see on successful deals where investors are getting returns that people like Google, Amazon, and Facebook, let's say they want to pay $250 million for the company, they're going to say, I want to pay $200 million for the cap table, which you guys are all a part of, and then I want to pay $50 million over 4 years for the employees. And why this is important is it puts you against, you kind of pitch you against the investors. But Google, Facebook, they don't care if the investors make money. They want you guys to be happy. But now you have a fiduciary duty to all of your shareholders to get the right price and to make sure that everybody on the cap table gets money as well. So you have to watch out for that. That's where it's helpful to have a bank involved. Good CEOs and founders are good at balancing this. But Facebook and Google want the money in your pockets to make you happy and use it as food for you to stick around. So that's one thing. The other thing they're doing is, on average, 3 to 4 years of revesting probably half of what you were going to make. You're going to make $20 million on the deal, they'll give you $10 million day one. The other $10 million is earned out over 3 to 4 years. And that's because in 2005, when I was selling internet companies to media companies, they would give them all the cash day one. And then after 3 months, as Matt mentioned, it gets pretty frustrating working for Scripps, where I sold 2 companies. The team just leaves because they have all the money in their pocket. So obviously the investors have gotten smarter and said, wait a minute, we're going to take some of this, make it glue for them to stick around. They still want you to be happy. It's mainly time vest. I think somebody mentioned earnout. In 18 years, I've only accepted 2 traditional earnouts. Earnouts are the worst. You lose complete control over the company once you're bought by the acquirer, and you virtually have no chance to get that earnout. That's different than revesting. Revesting, everybody does. It's time-based if you get fired for anything but cause, you get that money. There's one exception to that, which is Google, which everybody is at-will employees. So let's say in that case where you were supposed to get $20 million, you get the $10 million day one. If they fire you 3 months into your job for any reason, you don't get the other $10 million. Just something to be aware of with Google. Let's see, understanding process. You'll see there's a question mark up here between initial relationship approach and preliminary due diligence. And you heard Natasha say some deals take 2.5 to 3 years. That's very true. And that's because this process, where you're getting to know them, can take, it can take a year, it can take 3 months. Maybe they're interested right away. But very rarely does something happen in 30 days. So this process of them getting to know you, you working with them, you showing them that over time you're going to do what you say you're going to do, and you build what you say you're going to build. That's the long part of the process. Once someone's decided to buy you, and they give you either a verbal offer or they give you a written offer, you generally have 2, 3, 4 weeks to contact others. That's true for almost everybody except for Amazon. If you get a term sheet from Amazon, they will not give you the term sheet until you say, yes, I'm going to take that term sheet, I'm going to sign it, I'm not going to shop it. The rest of them realize you're probably going to shop it for a little bit, without being too obvious about it. So that can take anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. If you want to sign it, you can sign it as fast as you want. But there's a lot of stuff in that term sheet, not just valuation. All the stuff about employees and revesting is in there, all the indemnities, escrows, etc. A lot of important points are in there, especially with the IP rules the way they are. Confirmatory due diligence. Once you sign this term sheet, you're in really good shape with most known acquirers. Very few deals fall out in this 30 to 60 days, okay? And the key with that is to make sure they know enough before you sign that term sheet. Once you sign that term sheet and you've gone exclusive for, most companies are going to require 45 days, some 60, sometimes if it's really an aggressive process, you get 30. You've lost all your leverage. If the deal falls apart in that zone, then you have to go back to the other acquirers and they know the other deal fell apart because you haven't talked to them for 3 weeks. And if they know that, then they're coming and looking at you with a whole new lens. So the key on this, and I think Natasha and Matt were talking about sharing information, is you want to get as much information out prior to the term sheet, including bad information, bad news. You want them to understand that before you've agreed on price. All the leverage goes to them once you're in due diligence. So we as advisors argue that you should share more information. Now, somebody mentioned source code. I've never seen where you actually give the source code to the buyer ever. I've sold 2 AI companies, one to Uber and one to Facebook. They never saw the source code. You can have a third party review the source code to make sure that you're not using other people's code and things like that. It's a third party. They warehouse it. The company never gets to see it, and you don't share source code. But you share just about everything else to ensure that they're making the right decision and they're confident in the valuation and the other terms they've given you. Signing and closing is, generally you can do same day for private companies. Sometimes there's a couple of days in between while you go round up some shareholders for their votes, but generally you can do simultaneous signing and close. We talked a bit about this, in this phase where you're courting them, but you're not courting them for M&A yet, or at least they don't know that or think that yet. You don't have to be too stealthy. If you're a good team and you have a good idea, there's not many people that can steal it from you and then outwork you. The reason why startups are great is because you have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 hungry people going exactly where you want them to go with that specific idea. Even Google, Amazon, Apple, with all their prowess, with all their, the resources they have, they're not going to beat you if you're that focused on that one idea. They have a bunch of things they're working on. And when you look at most of their companies, they're pretty good at 1 or 2 things that feed their entire businesses and feed the other stuff they do. So you don't really have to worry about too many people stealing your ideas. It's really more about execution, which I think Matt and Natasha also mentioned. Preliminary due diligence, there's kind of 3 things they're focused on. The first 2, for most of you, are the most important. Financial modeling just needs to be there because they want to trust you, and they need to build some case when they go to their manager and say, we want to spend $200 million on this company. They want to know that you have some of this kind of financial modeling DNA built in, but multiples don't mean anything. We sold a company this year that was losing $20 million a year and had almost 0 prospects for revenue, and we sold it for $140 million, right? And then we've sold companies at 1 times revenue. So multiples don't really matter. It's about the strategic value. What they really care about is the organization and the team and the tech. The team is almost today more important than the actual tech itself. And the reason why they created this 3 to 4 year reinvesting is because they realized that with you guys focused on something, that's where the value is. So when they bring you over to their company, they want you to keep doing that for them. They're just going to give you more resources, a broader platform. But they don't believe they can just take the tech and then put a random team on it and be successful. So the team is really important here. I think we've covered most of that. I think we covered earnout. We covered exclusivity. We covered holdback, which was really the revesting. Escrow reps and warranties, all of that stuff your banker, your lawyer will help you with. By the way, you talk about when a banker gets involved in a process. Despite what most bankers will say, there's a lot of deals you can do without a banker. If you're doing an acqui-hire, there's not enough money to go around. Don't pay a bank $2.5 million out of the 10 or 15 million that's coming to you. Somebody like us will advise you on the side, give you help. Your investors will help you. You need a good lawyer in every deal, but you don't always need a banker. Where bankers can help is, at some point, there's going to be a negotiation. And like I said, they're making you revest because they want you to work there. The last thing you want to do is be arguing with your future boss over all of these terms for 2 or 3 weeks. Because then when you arrive at the company, it's very hard for them to forget those things. So just having us be the bad guy does help. Now, hopefully we add more value than that. We help you get your management presentation ready. We tell you about the hot buttons. We get you to the right people at the acquirers. And then, of course, we negotiate and help you through due diligence. But you don't want to negotiate all of these terms directly with your future employer. Confirmatory due diligence, term sheet negotiation, I think we just went through most of that. That's really on the banker. Confirmatory due diligence. This is the deal set, you're in exclusivity, but they've got to kind of check to make sure there's no legal issues, no accounting issues, no financial issues. The banker can be very helpful in this process because you're going to have like 30 people coming at you. We sold the company to IBM, and they literally brought 60 people to one of the due diligence sessions from New York out to San Francisco. We had to rent a special conference room to do this. You don't want to be, as the founder, trying to run and manage all of those work streams while you're still building your company. So, that is another role of the bank. Papering the deal. There's a term sheet that you sign that is 5 pages, probably maximum. The definitive agreement is going to be 150 pages. So there's a lot of work to do legally between when you sign the term sheet and when you finish. The lawyers and the bankers are very good at getting those things done and figuring out what's market and getting you to the right deal. The other thing that will be important to you guys will be employment agreements. There's much more than you would think in there. There's obviously the revesting piece. There's what's for cause, what's not for cause. There is non-competes they want you to sign up to, that if you actually leave, even if you don't collect all the money, they don't want you to work in that same space for a year or two. Those are very difficult for you guys to sign because you know a space really well. If it doesn't work out with the acquirers, you want to go out and get employed after that. So there's a lot of stuff in there. In general, what you will do on the deals is you'll hire a special counsel for you and your other key executives just to negotiate those employment contracts. So you guys can share that with the rest of the team. Signing, closing, I don't think you need to go through that right now. What I would say is it's a hard process, and it's not run like it used to. You need to court these people over a long period of time. You need to get them to lean into you. And then again, you need to have that other path where you can say no. We were selling a company to Intel, not to pick on Intel. It was a company based in Canada. And they said, come in, we want to give you the offer to the CEO. We were just in the background right now because, again, if the company's not for sale, you probably don't have a banker yet. And we said, you need to know what your price is going into that meeting. And you need to know when you're going to say no or when you're going to say, yes, please give me the term sheet, I'll take it back to my investors. Those are the only two answers when you get an offer. It's never like, yes, that's great. It's, I will take it to my investors, or it's no, don't give me that. So Dan, the CEO, went in to Intel, and they gave him the offer, and he had to say no. It was pretty good money for him, and it's hard because for a lot of you, all of your money's wrapped up in this entity. And he had to say no, don't give me the term sheet, and he had to walk out. And he called me right after, and he was kind of freaking out, and the offer was, I think at that time it was somewhere in the low 30s. And he had made his cut line at $45 million. Like under there, I'm not gonna even entertain it. So he's like, did I make a big mistake? Did I make a big mistake? About a month later, they called him down again. They gave him another offer. He had to walk away again. The third time they gave him the offer, it was in the right zone. We said, okay, let's go, and move into due diligence. We called others. Nobody matched the price. We signed a term sheet with Intel, and then in the middle of the process, we got an unsolicited offer from somebody that just couldn't move as fast at a higher price. So then Intel had to raise their price again. So from first offer to what Dan closed on was, over 2.5x. Because he had the ability to say no in that meeting, he had financing. He was secure in his standalone path. So that's the one thing you guys really need to remember about this. The intricate art, I've been doing M&A for 18 years. I've never had two deals be the same. Every situation is different. The situation of the company that I'm selling, the situation of the buyer, it's always different. The terms, which makes M&A a lot of fun, but it's an intricate art because you need to know what to say to people, how to say it to people, when to say it to people, so you make sure you get the best deal. And the last line, I think we've talked about this, but you need to be bought, not sold. As soon as people think you're selling, they either think, okay, well, maybe I'll bid a little bit lower. Let's say, for instance, you want to sell your company for $250 million. That's kind of the goal. And they say, and you give them that guidance, which is sometimes you do, because sometimes they need it. and they say, well, here's a $150 million offer, and you say yes to that. And it clearly undervalues the company, and you say, yes, let's keep working. And they're like, that's strange. The company's really probably worth 250. They wanted 250. They just said yes to 150. So then they say, well, maybe they'll take 50. So the next offer goes down through due diligence. And then there are 50, and you say, yeah, let's keep talking. Eventually they say, we don't want to buy this company at all, right? Because they're like, why would they take such a low price? There's something wrong here. So knowing how to talk to them and how to say no, how to say yes, when to engage them, that's really critical to how they feel about the company. And just doing something at a lower price generally leads you to the path of no deal. So at some point in that process, you need to stand up for yourself, or your banker does, and you need to take a risk in the process. Natasha was talking about timeline. If someone's doing due diligence and they're doing it for 6 months, it's time to just stop the conversation. They'll do due diligence as long as you let them do due diligence. Right? They'll have as many meetings as they want. Their corporate development teams are huge. They have all the time in the day. But if you never cut that off, why would they ever put the offer on the table? So there's always going to be a time where you're going to stand up for yourself to get the right deal. So with that, I don't know what kind of time we're on, but I guess I can do Q&A.
Awesome. Well, let's get started right off with questions. Please.
Hi, I'm curious your advice for management team of when they negotiate their own deal, assuming it's not an acquired hire.
Yeah.
And particularly when a term sheet comes with some assumptions about management will roll over, yes, or there'll be a holdback or whatnot. Right. When do you bring those things up?
Absolutely. So in the term sheet, you want to negotiate the key employee contracts in as much detail as you can before you sign that term sheet. Once you sign that term sheet, you lose all the leverage. In general, let's say the company, for most startups, there's probably going to be 3 to 5 of those key employees. And so that's when you do it. So they're going to send you the term sheet, and you're going to have your banker or yourself, if you don't have a banker, kind of represent that group of employees in that term sheet. All the terms that are in there related to you are just as important as the ones for the overall company. The one thing you should understand is there is no deal without the employees, and there is especially no deal without the key employees. So that's when you have the most leverage. So you negotiate it right there. If you sign a term sheet and go into exclusivity, you've lost a lot of leverage.
So there's an array of questions here. Yeah, let's start here.
So let's say a early stage revenue company, 100 million give or take value. How much cash should I have allocated to spend pre-closing?